Before it ever sparkled, it was made of diamond stuff. But when it's found, as when it's ground, as when it's burnished bright, that diamond's everlasting. It's giving off its light. The diamond in the rough is a diamond sure enough. So it was already a diamond. What stuff are you made of? What kind of stuff are you made of? Life is tough. I just feel that life is designed to pull you down. It's designed that way. It's like gravity. It's there. It's designed to pull you down. Anything you have to do to get something good, if you're going to build muscle, you have to push against resistance. And gravity is there pulling us down. But without gravity, could we fly? So it's natural. It's normal. That's the way it is. Les Brown says that in life, you're either in a storm, heading towards one, or just left one. Always a storm. And the size of your success is going to be in direct relation to your personal growth. What you can stand in front of and be comfortable. Let me read something for you. There's some people going through life and they're going through the challenges. And they think, you know what? Instead of going through the challenges, let me just back down. Let me just stay normal. Let me have some caution here. Let me not push forward because I don't want to get knocked back. There's a saying, it says, there was a very cautious man who never laughed or played. He never risked, he never attempted, he never sang or prayed. And when one day he passed away, his insurance was denied. For since he never lived, they claimed he never died. You have to learn to be tenacious. You've got to learn to be tenacious. There's a lot of people right now going through life and they're practicing. They're practicing going into business. We're talking about the Success Conference. We're going to be talking about business all day on Saturday. There are people who say they are going into business. And I had a fantastic talk with Sister Adiola and Brother Stan the other day. We're talking about Monopoly. And we're talking about the fun we have with Monopoly. And it's a great game. But I know people that play this game week in, week out. You know why? Because they're preparing. They're preparing. I'm preparing for life. When I get the skills from here. There are people playing the cash flow game. I don't know if any of you have ever played the cash flow game. They're playing it week in, week out. Online, there are people on Facebook. Have anybody been on Facebook playing Cafe World or Farmville? And you know what they say? I'm preparing. I'm preparing in business. Where do you learn how to become tenacious? You learn it in the field, not in a game. And there's a game going on, and it's called a game of life. This is the game you need to play in, because if I was to take you in my back garden, and I if I gave you a ball, I taught you how to run, I taught you how to kick the ball, I taught you how to run with the ball, would you become a world-class rugby player in my back garden? But I taught you the skills. I taught you how to hold the ball and run around, go on. I taught you how to kick the ball. I hit the ball, you jumped, you caught it. Why can't you become a world-class rugby player? Because you need to get in the field. So I'm going to say to any of you here playing games, stop playing the game and join the game of life. You have to get to a stage where you say no matter what. What do I know about tenacity? I'll tell you something, what happened to me many years ago. And I hate talking about, not hate, but I don't like talking about this because it just reminds me of a time when I messed up completely. I used to have a record shop in Dalston in Ridley Road in the market, in the indoor market. I had a record shop and I borrowed money from people that you were not supposed to borrow money from. I borrowed money from the people that if you couldn't pay them back, then they don't send letters to you. One Tuesday, they turned up at the record shop with their cars and their vans, and they took every single record. Within half an hour, they emptied the shop. Every single record was gone. The only CD that was left in the place was the one in the machine playing. And I stood behind the counter like that, looking at all of my fellow colleagues who had their shops and their stalls fully stocked, and I was standing behind my counter playing the record. Would you believe I stayed there for nearly the rest of the day? Shame kept me there. But it got worse. That was Tuesday. 2 days later on Thursday, they broke down my front door. They broke down my front door and they held me in the house. And as I stood there in my hallway, they had a gun and they continued to talk to me and explain to me why I should give the money back. And they kept doing this with the gun. They kept doing that with the gun. And as I stood there and tears were rolling down my eyes, half out of fear, half out of frustration. Because I'm standing there and I'm saying to myself, if this gun goes off, I have no head left. My daughter was about 3 years old at the time, and I had believed that I was going to see my daughter grow up. And I said to myself, how can you mess up this much? And I'm standing there and they tell me what they tell me. They took things from my house and they left. And the next day my mentor called me. And he called me up and he started to ask me questions. I was in no mood to speak to him. And he asked me questions. The one thing I would say, I was not silly enough to ignore his calls. When somebody is helping me, I'm never silly enough to ignore their calls. But he started asking me questions. He said, how is the record shop going? I explained to him what had happened. He said to me, I was in a direct selling business with him. He said, how's the business going? I said to him, it wasn't going very well. He asked me about my brothers. I had a lot of problems with some of my family members. That wasn't going well. Everything he asked me was not working. And then he asked me a question that I didn't want him to ask me. He said to me, how is your dream? How is your dream? And I started to cry. I started to cry because I didn't want to answer the question. Because I wanted to be negative. I wanted to say something sarcastic. And I had no other answer for him. I said to him, that's all I've got left. And I knew what he was going to say next. I knew what he was going to say. He said to me, when the dream is big enough, the facts don't count. It was difficult. It was horrible. And he said to me, the dream is big enough, the facts don't count. And I thought to him, what do you mean the facts don't count? They do count. And he was trying to get me to focus. Because if you're focused on your dreams, trust me, if your dreams are big enough, the facts will not count. You will find a way. From that day onwards, I developed a mindset. I developed a way of dealing with things. And it's called no matter what. People say to me, how come, where do you get the energy from? I'm 5 foot something. I don't even know what it is. And I'm a pocket dynamo. I'm a pocket dynamo. I'm tenacious. There's an exit sign at the back of this room. And I tell you something, even if this auditorium was full, I could come off this stage and I could keep my eye on that exit sign. And no matter what I had to climb over, who I had to get through, you couldn't stop me. I developed a mindset called no matter what. Let me hear you say no matter what. Say it again. Say it like you believe it. When I point to you, I want you to say no matter what. So I could explain to you what I mean when I say no matter what. I'm going to be successful. So if I go home this evening and my house is burned down to the ground, then I'm still going to be successful. If I get a phone call and they say to me, you know what, your businesses are crashed and everything you have is gone, I'm still going to be successful. If I get a phone call that somebody who I love dearly is sick or dying or has died, I'm going to be successful. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I tell you something, as long as my Creator allows me to get up and breathe, I will not stop. If they diagnose me with a terminal illness and they say you have X amount of time to live, I'm still going to be successful. And when you get the mindset of no matter what, I could write a book on the excuses that people have given me. I've heard all kinds of excuses. Sick animals, sick children, all kinds of madness. And I'm not saying these things are not important, but it's amazing what people allow to get in their way, and when their boss calls, they come running. If you're going to be successful, you have to change your expectation, you have to change your belief, and you have to get a spirit of tenacity inside of you. By the way, am I being too vague? Let me hear you say T. T stands for testimonial. Testimony is a formal letter testifying a person's character, conduct, or qualifications. I'm not talking about that kind of testimonial. I'm not talking about the kind of testimonial you get somebody to write for you when you want a reference for a job. I'm talking about the testimonials that we talk about and remember. Things that people have done. Life's hard. Life's hard. If you're going through a test right now, then I'm going to encourage you to get through the test. Because if you can get through the test, you can turn that test into somebody's testimony. If your life is in a mess, get through the mess and turn that mess into somebody's message. And if you're going through hell, don't stop. We're living in the gap. We are living in the gap. I've told you about this before. We're living in the gap. On the average gravestone, you look at the gravestone, there's a year they were born, the year they died, and in the middle there's a gap or a dash. That represents your life. So you're living in the dash right now. What are you putting into that gap? What are you going to do with this time? Some people operate as if they had a hotline to heaven. Because they say to me, I'm talking to them and saying, listen, we need to make a start. We need to get things going. Oh, Anthony, I need a few things sorted out first. I need a few things sorted out first. Some bits and pieces. I just need 3-4 weeks and then I'm going to start on my goals. I beg your pardon? They must have gone home and the phone rang and they had the hotline. And the hotline, hello? This is the angel speaking. Yeah? God has said you're guaranteed the next 4 weeks. You don't have to start yet. Okay. It blows my mind. It blows my mind. How could you even believe that you're going to leave something? I'm doing it now. I'm doing it now. There's not another minute guaranteed. And I don't understand that. You have to get a sense of urgency. Because you do not have the luxury of time. There is going to come a time in your life when you have more yesterdays than you had tomorrows. And at that point, some people become a could have, would have, should have. You shouldn't do that. It's not a good idea. Procrastination, you know this already. It's the biggest nation. People putting things off for tomorrow, what they could have done today. In 1905, a young physics student learned that his dissertation had been turned down by the University of Bern. But he had an attitude of no matter what. And he went on to develop some of his ideas into widely accepted theories. His name was Albert Einstein. Spirit of no matter what. In 1894, a 16-year-old student read a note from his teacher which said, a conspicuous lack of success. But he had an attitude of no matter what, and he went on to become one of the most famous world leaders in history. His name was Winston Churchill. Walt Disney, he was fired from his magazine, from a magazine job because he lacked imagination. And he said at the age 21, he went broke for the first time. He said he slept on cushions from a sofa and he ate cold beans from a can. What does the word Walt Disney mean to us now? And some of you, you face no, you face rejection, and you just want to give up. It doesn't make sense. You see, 100 years from now, 100 years from now, when they're teaching our children and our children's children, when you're gone, when I'm gone, when it's all over, 100 years from now, they're going to speak somebody's name. They're going to speak somebody's name. And I bet you they will speak Pastor Sam's name. I bet you they'll speak Reverend Betty's name. Will they speak your name 100 years from now? Going through life, making it meaningless. God's given you life. He's given you life. I can't think of any other gift. Every minute I'm grateful. I rarely pray and ask for anything. I hardly ever pray and ask for anything. My prayers are filled with thank you for this, thank you for that, thank you for this.